Hi, I'm Steve. If you're looking for help with narcissistic personality disorder, I can guess that you've had some kind of rude shock in your life. Otherwise, like me, you probably never would have admitted that you had a problem. I could always find a way to either blame someone else for my problems or forget about my troubles completely by entertaining the people in my life who put me on a pedestal. It didn't matter that I secretly thought these people were fools. It just got me through, and I did my best to ignore the chaos and despair that grew around me. My wife Kim was unhappy, and the kids were unhappy, and so I just pretended that they were to blame. And again, I was the victim. Why didn't I have happy kids and a happy wife like I deserved? If you know anything about our story, you'll know that it wasn't me who pulled myself out of this mess. It was Kim. That was very hard for her, because she had to pull herself out of her own mess at the same time, and in the beginning I really didn't make it easy for her. It was easy for me to take all my anger and rage and disappointment in life out on her and blame her for the mess our life had become. It was easy for me to justify things like porn use, flirting with other women and selfishness, irresponsibility with money, because I was hanging out with a lot of guys who from that perspective were just as bad or worse than me. And I could say that all men were like that, and that it was unrealistic and even wrong of Kim to want better from me. Any man who might have been a good role model for me back then was just a threat to all this rationalizing I was doing, and so I would simply find fault with him and even ridicule him for pretending he was perfect when he was not. The truth behind all this, however, was that I was angry because I was scared, and I was scared because I didn't want to face how disappointed I was in life and how much I'd completely given up on myself ever being able to win if I played by the rules. Life was unfair, and seemingly I'd lost irretrievably the hope and joy and innocence I had as a child. I daydreamed about old girlfriends I had when I was still young and still believed in love, and I didn't want to face that it was my own lack of skills that had brought me to this. Even if I admitted that I didn't have any answers, I could see no one around me that I had any faith in to lead the way and show me how to live honestly and fairly. So instead I lived for alcohol and whoever I could get to adore me for a while, and I sidestepped all other accountability and responsibility. Back then, me facing that would have been inconceivably painful. To admit I was lost would have meant complete humiliation. Well, when I had sunk to just about the depths of this despair, something remarkable started to happen. Kim started to grow up. And when I say grow up, I really mean it. You see, before she used to use my poor treatment of her as an excuse for her own problems, and she had played the victim too. But now things started to change. Kim stopped drinking and started taking care of herself better. She also started to make friends with people in the community that could help her straighten me out too. She stopped complaining and she started doing. She stopped arguing and started sticking up for herself with a whole new support network of new friends around her. She stopped being ashamed of how I was treating her and started looking and acting more sure of herself and of her right to be respected. And I was incredibly lucky because although she could have and probably should have thrown me out on the street, she built this life raft not only for herself but for me. I started to trust Kim. I started to see that I better listen to her new rules because they made sense and were just, and they were also the best hope I had. I learned from Kim that it matters if you lie. Being honest earns others' trust, and being honest and responsible earns you freedom. I'd neglected these virtues, and it almost landed me in jail. I didn't want to go to jail. I wanted to be respected, and I wanted to be free, and I began to see that being honest and responsible was the only way for me to achieve this. Trusting Kim turned my life around. I could have kept justifying the porn and the women and the booze and all the other vices that I certainly was not alone in pursuing. But I saw at last that by pursuing these things, I was not finding the freedom I craved. I was dragging my family and myself into the gutter. There's nothing greater than to be loved and accepted by people who know you, and I can think of no place I would rather be now than at home. Once I stopped pretending I had all the answers and accepted that in many areas I was going to have to go back to basics and start learning all over again how to be an honest human being, a number of things started happening then. The first is that I saw my family did actually love me. I didn't have to pretend to be more than what I was at home. I could be as quiet and vulnerable as a child, and they would still be there for me and help me. They liked me better when I admitted I was lost than when I had tried to pretend I was in charge. And the second thing was that even if I had to go back to basics, at least I was now making real progress. The skills I was now learning might be humble, but they were real and they were slowly changing my life. If you have someone in your life that is prepared to help you through whatever crisis you're now facing, or if the crisis is that they've already abandoned you, either way I would suggest that you trust in Kim like I did. Her ideas are very simple at their heart, and the gap finder in the Love Safety Net workbook is a great place to start. I used to avoid my inadequacies in many areas, but I'm now filling those gaps in. I've become responsible with money, and Kim trusts me now, which has come from me working hard at telling the truth. You may have worn out apologising to your family, and so I would not suggest you expect them to forgive you on this basis anymore. Decide what gap work you're going to tackle. Set realistic goals for yourself, and watch and learn from the short videos in the Love Safety Net Love Boat Cruise. Let your family know what your goals are, and make one of them learning to be genuinely interested in others. The more questions you ask, and the more you listen, the more interesting you'll discover that people really are. Tell your family you don't expect them to believe you are sorry unless you show them, and that you can show them from tackling the goals you set up in the gap finder. You also need to be honest that they need to be patient with you. This is not going to be an overnight transformation. Your goals need to be solid and realistic, and you'll need to learn to say no to people that try and talk you into doing things that you're not really ready for, or that you might get carried away with. People that feed your ego are a danger, and you need to learn that. They're usually using you anyway, and perhaps you might learn to see that. There were people that wanted me to lead their band or be their star student on big projects and other things, and I wasn't ready for that, and I had to learn to say no. What Kim was offering me, that is, keeping me focused on learning to do my books and get caught up with my taxes and be responsible with money, might not have sounded as exciting as all the other projects, but I now learned who really cared about me, and it was not the people trying to encourage me to be a star when I really wasn't ready for that. It was Kim who knew the real foundations I lacked, and who had the patience to stand by me while I took steps to learn the things I should have learned years ago. My taxes and books are now up to date, and that might not sound exciting, but I tell you what, it feels really good, and it feels better than being the singer in anyone's band. And because I have those foundations filled, I now get time to sing and do the things that I've needed to learn, things that I've needed to learn from scratch, and I'm not taking any shortcuts now. It's a better way to live.